Stop scrolling. Right now. Because what happened at the Ogunleye wedding last Saturday is something the entire island of Lagos is still whispering about. And by the time I am done with this story, you are going to understand why every socialite in Victoria Island uninvited the groom from their group chat by Sunday morning. This is not gossip. This is not rumor. This is the kind of thing that happens once in a generation, where a man who had built a business empire worth more than the GDP of some small African countries walked into his own son's wedding in a simple white agbada, carrying nothing in his hands, and within 90 minutes broke the back of a family who thought they were untouchable. The maid at the center of this story is my source. She sat across from me at a buka in Yaba 2 days ago, eating amala and ewedu, and she told me what really happened. Not the version the bride's family is selling on social media, not the version the pastor tried to clean up for the cameras, but the actual, raw truth. I am going to tell it to you the way she told it to me, and I promise you, by the end of this story, you will never look at a luxury wedding the same way again. Her name is Adaeze Okonkwo, 26 years old, from a one-room apartment behind the Nnewi spare parts market. She is the first daughter. She has 3 younger brothers. She dropped out of Unilag in her 3rd year because her father, a man she barely saw growing up, fell sick in 2019, and the family needed someone to send money home. So Adaeze took a job as a domestic helper for the Ogunleye family. Yes, that Ogunleye family. The ones behind Ogunleye Group. The ones whose name is etched in glass on Awolowo Road. She has worked for them for 4 years. She knows which fork goes on the left. She knows how to fold a table napkin into a swan. She knows how to pour wine without a single drop touching a guest's sleeve. And she has been humiliated more in those 4 years than most people get humiliated in a lifetime. But none of that humiliation came close to what she experienced on the 12th of last month, on a Saturday, inside the Echo Hotel ballroom at what was supposed to be the wedding of the decade. The groom's name is Akinwumi Ogunleye, 32, Yale graduate, runs the Lagos branch of the family business. The bride's name is Chinwe Adekunle, 29, former beauty queen, daughter of Chief Adekunle, the oil magnate from Port Harcourt. The wedding was budgeted at 340 million naira. The aso, the bride's gown alone, cost $98,000. Shipped in from Paris, hand-stitched with Swarovski stones, the kind of dress that takes 6 months to make and only ever gets worn once. There were 350 guests. The governor was invited. 3 past ministers were on the guest list. The father of the bride arrived in a private jet. And yet, and this is the part the public relations team will never admit, half of the staff serving at that wedding had no idea they were about to step into the middle of a story that would break the internet before the cake was even cut. Adaeze was not on the original staff list for that event. She was added 3 days before the wedding because Kemi, the head housekeeper for the Ogunleyes, called her on a Wednesday morning and said, "Adaeze, I need you. The catering company short-staffed us, and I trust you." Adaeze took a danfo from Ojota to the island. She wore her work uniform, a clean black blouse and a wrap skirt. She tied her gele the way Kemi taught her. She polished her shoes twice. She arrived at Echo Hotel at 9 in the morning, before any guest, and she stood in the kitchen corridor with 40 other servers, listening to the wedding planner bark instructions she had heard 100 times before. Plate on the left, glass on the right. Smile. Always smile. Never make eye contact with the bride's family. Whatever you do, do not spill. She did not know that the woman who would change her life forever was standing less than 4 feet away from her, behind a curtain, holding a clipboard and a glass of rosé. Chinwe's best friend is named Toke Daniels, the kind of Lagos socialite whose Instagram is 90% vacation and 10% passive aggression. Toke had arrived early too, because she was one of the 6 official bridesmaids, and bridesmaids have responsibilities, especially when the bride has a reputation for perfection. The first red flag appeared at 11:30 during the dress rehearsal. Adeze was carrying a tray of canapés, small puff pastry squares topped with minced beef and pepper sauce, across the front of the stage, and Chinwe, who was stepping out of a fitting room in her rehearsal underdress, collided with her. It was not Adeze's fault. The wedding planner had moved the mirror, and Adeze had not been told. 2 canapés fell. One landed on the floor. The other landed on the rehearsal underdress, leaving a single red stain near the hem. Chinwe screamed. Not the polite scream you make when you drop a fork. The loud, ugly scream that silences a room. Toke came running. Within 10 seconds, 6 people surrounded Adeze. The seamstress, the makeup artist, the wedding planner, and Toke, who pointed one manicured finger at Adeze's face and said in a voice that carried across the whole room, You think because they call you staff you can disrespect a bride like that? Clean that dress right now, or I will make sure you never find work in Lagos again." Adeze apologized. Twice. She got on her knees. She wiped the dress with a damp cloth the seamstress handed her. Chinwe said nothing. She just stared. That stare was worse than the scream. Adeze finished cleaning, stood up, and went back to the kitchen. She did not cry. She had been yelled at before. She knew her place in that room. She went back to plating canapés. The wedding began at 4 p.m. Guests arrived in a river of luxury cars, Rolls-Royces, Maybachs, a matte black Range Rover with tinted windows so dark they looked like obsidian. The mother of the bride wore coral beads worth more than the house Adeze grew up in. The father of the bride wore agbada so heavy with embroidery that he needed 2 men to help him sit down. The groom's parents arrived in a separate convoy. Adeze watched from the service corridor, the way she always watched. Silent, present, invisible. She had 3 duties for the evening. First, serve the hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour. Second, pour for the head table during dinner. Third, clear the head table after dessert. The head table. That's where the bride and groom sit. The place of honor. The seat of judgment. Adeze was specifically chosen for that role because she had the cleanest hands and the steadiest arm among the 40 servers. Dinner began at 7 p.m. Adeze approached the head table with a bottle of Moët. She poured for the groom first, the protocol, then the bride, then the best man, then the maid of honor. Chinwe took the glass, sipped, and made a face like the wine had insulted her family. She leaned over to Toke. Toke leaned back. Both women looked at Adeze. Then Chinwe raised her glass, and what happened next is the moment every guest at that table still remembers. Chinwe tilted the glass, and the entire glass of Moët, every drop, cascaded down onto Adeze's white shirt. Not the tabletop, not the floor. Adeze. On purpose. The room did not gasp. It froze. 200 guests at the head table watched in slow horror as a 38,000 naira wedding dress sat across from a server whose entire outfit, including shoes, was probably not worth 38,000 naira combined. The wine soaked Adeze's blouse. It dripped onto the floor. Adeze did not move. She did not speak. She looked at Chinwe with the kind of calm that only people who have survived real suffering can produce. Toke laughed. A short, ugly, joyless laugh. Then Toke reached over, took the soup tureen that had been placed in the center of the table, and poured the entire contents, lobster bisque, the chunky kind, the kind with flecks of real lobster meat, over Adese's head. The soup ran down Adese's gele. It ran into her eyes. It ran down her neck and pooled in her collarbones. She stood still. Her hands did not shake. Her face did not twist. She breathed in through her nose and out through her mouth, the way her mother had taught her to breathe when her father beat her as a child. And she waited. The bride's mother stood up. The mother of the bride, a woman in coral beads from Port Harcourt, did something remarkable. She walked around the table, took a clean napkin from the sideboard, and pressed it into Adese's hand. She said, in a voice only Adese could hear, "Please forgive my daughter. She is not well." Then she returned to her seat. The bride's father did not move. The groom's father did not move. The best man did not move. The maid of honor did not move. 200 guests did not move. Because in that moment, every single person at that table understood in their bones that something had crossed a line that evening that could not be crossed back. Toke laughed again. Then she stopped laughing, because she looked up toward the back of the hall, and at the entrance of the ballroom, standing under the gold chandelier with both hands folded behind his back, was the one man in that room whose presence made Akinwumi Ogunleye himself look small. His name is Chief Emeka Okonkwo, the groom's business partner, the largest single shareholder of Ogunleye Group. The man who, 15 years earlier, had walked into a half-built office on Broad Street with a briefcase and a handshake, and together with the groom's late father, had turned a tomato paste distributor into a manufacturing conglomerate with operations in 7 West African countries. Chief Emeka had not been on the wedding program. His name had been deliberately removed from the invitation list by Chinwe's family, because his presence, though they would never admit this publicly, would have shifted the power dynamic at the head table from the bride's family to the groom's family. So they struck him off. They thought he would not notice. They thought he would not care. He had not known that his own daughter was working as a maid for the Ogunleyes. He had not seen Adese in 4 years because when Adese dropped out of university, she told her father she wanted to manage her own life, and the two of them had arranged a cold distance. Money stopped flowing, phone calls grew short, and the father-daughter bond that had once been unbreakable frayed into polite silence. Adese did not want her father's name. She did not want his money. She did not want the doors he could open. She wanted to know who she was without the shadow of Chief Emeka Okonkwo. So she worked. She cleaned. She poured wine for women like Chinwe, and women like Chinwe poured wine on her. That was the arrangement, and it had been working. Until Saturday. When Chief Emeka walked into the ballroom, the room recognized him before the room understood why he was there. The maitre d' stepped forward. The chief waved him off. He walked down the center aisle with the unhurried gait of a man who has never once had to chase a single thing in his life. His agbada was white. His cap was white. His coral beads were the deep red of Benin. He stopped at the head table. He looked at Adese. Adese looked at him. And for the first time in 4 years, neither of them spoke. And both of them understood everything. Then the chief did something that nobody in that ballroom, including the governor, including the ministers, including Chinwe's father, believed that Chief Emeka Okonkwo would ever do in public. He took out his phone. He opened his contacts. He placed a single call. It rang twice. The person who answered was the managing director of the bank that held the Ogunliye Group's operating account. Chief Emeka said 5 words. He said, "Close it. All of it. Now." Then he hung up. Within 7 minutes, the bride's father received a notification on his phone. The groom's business credit line, 38 billion naira, had been frozen. Within 12 minutes, the wedding planner received a notification that the venue's deposit, paid through the Ogunliye corporate account, had been reversed. Within 20 minutes, the catering company had been informed that the post-wedding invoice, which was supposed to be settled on Monday morning, would not be settled. The wedding was, suddenly and without warning, bankrupt. The room erupted, not in applause, not in shock, in confusion. People did not understand what was happening. The governor did not understand. The ministers did not understand. The priest did not understand. But Chinwe understood. Because Adeze, the maid, had finally raised her eyes. And when she did, and when Toke saw the family resemblance between Adeze and the man standing behind her, Toke dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the marble. And that, my friend, is the sound that has been echoing through Lagos for the past 4 days. I will tell you what happened after. The groom's father stood up. He shook Chief Emeka's hand. He apologized. He took the microphone and announced in front of 350 guests that the wedding had been suspended until further notice. Chinwe's father tried to intervene. He walked up to Chief Emeka and called him by his first name, the way old men do when they think familiarity will save them. Chief Emeka looked at him and said, "My daughter works for your family. Your wife pours wine on her. You fund a wedding that uses her as a prop. We are done." Chinwe's father did not speak for the rest of the night. Toke tried to leave. She was stopped at the door by 2 men in dark suits. She spent the next 2 hours in a private office with the venue's security director, explaining why she had poured lobster bisque over the head of a young woman whose grandfather had built a school in Newi with his own hands. By midnight, every picture from the head table had been removed from the photographer's hard drive. By Monday morning, the bride's family had issued 3 separate press releases and deleted all of them. The wedding hashtag Chinwe and Akin Wedding, was renamed twice and finally abandoned. Adeze did not stay for any of it. She walked out of the ballroom, through the side entrance, past the valet stand, into the parking lot where the catering trucks were unloading the next day's rejected buffet. She called a danful. She sat in the back. She took off her gele. She wiped the soup from her hair with a tissue. She arrived home in Ojota at 11 p.m. Her mother was awake. She asked Adeze what was wrong. Adeze said, "Nothing, Mama. I just need to take a bath." She took a bath. She slept. On Sunday morning, her father called. He did not apologize. He said in pidgin, "My pikin, I never knew." And Adeze said in the same pidgin, "I know, Papa." And the 4 years of silence between them ended in 11 words. This is the story of why every maid in Lagos is now walking straighter. This is the story of why every socialite in Victoria Island is checking the surname of every server at every event before they raise their voice. This is the story of what happens when a man who has nothing to lose finds out that the woman who raised him was humiliated by people who thought power was the same thing as class. It is not pretty. It is not noble. It is revenge, and it is real. And if you have ever worked with your hands, if you have ever been looked down on by someone in a designer outfit, if you have ever been told that your place in the room is the floor, this story is for you. Now look, I do not make these videos to entertain. I make these videos because somewhere out there, right now, a young woman is wiping shoes for a man who calls her the help. And I want that young woman to know that her father could be the president of a country. I want her to know that the borrowed gown and the rented shoes do not define her. I want her to know that one phone call can collapse an empire. So if this story moved you, and I mean truly moved you, not just entertained you for 5 minutes, do me 3 favors. Hit the subscribe button. Not because I asked. Hit it because the algorithm buries stories like this one when people like us are not paying attention. Turn on the notification bell, because the next story I am releasing this week is even darker. It is about a houseboy in Lekki who discovered that the woman he had been driving to work for 9 years was actually his mother's legal sister. And last, share this video with one person. Just one. A friend, a cousin, your driver, your house help. Share this story with the woman in your life who has ever been told that she is just the maid. Because sharing is the only way this kind of truth multiplies. I will see you in the next one.